Capital Games. I am the Wiz. Now, if you guys happen to not check out the weekly dividend from last week, of course, if you haven't, check it out. It's where I do the weekly news, or I did the weekly news while playing a game at the time. So check out last week's if you haven't. But if you haven't, I'll just summarize something I said at the end that I want to let everyone know about from this point on. I'm going to be changing formats a little bit for Capital Games. It may also mean I'm going to change the name of the channel, because I think I'm going to do something a little bit different than what I've been doing. And I'm going to start with the new format now. So here's a new format I'm coming up with, seeing how this works. Instead of waiting on the news to collect throughout the week and doing weekly dividend at the week, I'm going to do the news 3 times a week, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to do the stories that happen in between those days, and I'm going to pick up the top stories, and I'm going to talk about them on those days. And on top of that, I will discuss games I'm playing and any other topics that I want to discuss around that time too. So that way you can get your news from me and my opinions on those news when they come up, on top of anything else that I want to discuss on there. So I think this is going to be interesting, and hopefully you'll like it. If you do, comment, leave a like, let me know what you think of the new format. Now, before I get into the news, I want to discuss what I'm playing. And if you are on YouTube, you're checking out the gameplay right now. And what I'm playing is a little game called Curse to Golf. This game came out last year. It was in the Switch in one of their directs. I remember that. I think it might have been on one of the directs, with the Indie World directs. And I was interested in this game for a couple of reasons. One, I like golf games. I actually do. For a long time, I've liked golf games. I think the one I remember the most playing, I played the one on the Wii. I remember talking to Zero about this. Playing the Tiger Woods game on the Wii, where you were able to play frisbee golf. But the more traditional golf, of course, we have Hot Shots. But I also played a bit of Tiger Woods back in the day too, so I do like golf game. Curse to Golf is a little bit different. They turned the golf game into a dungeon crawler / puzzle game that is also a roguelike. And of course, if you've heard me before, I'll say it again, I'm a sicko for roguelikes. And this really appealed to me when it was announced. Now, this was announced August of last year. I decided to wait until it dropped in price a little bit. It dropped to around $12 about a couple weeks ago. And I've been checking it out. I've played about an hour of it right now. And I want to talk a little bit about it. And I'll probably play a little more for Wednesday as well. So I'll talk more about it then too. But I went through the tutorial and I did a run as well. And it's pretty fun. Like the way the puzzle mechanics are in this game, and the way that the shooting is as well, is pretty good. The only issue I have thus far is that it does tell you to prepare really for the shot you're making next, but it is still a little squirrely and a little difficult to really plan your shot as well. They do give you a running meter, not only for the power, but it gives you a sense to know where the curve is. But my issue with that is that it's hard to navigate where the bounce is going to happen once it hits the end of that curve. It takes a little getting used to, but when you I think I'm going to get used to it after a bit anyway. So that's a minor quibble. I could see some people getting a little frustrated with that as well. Also, with some of the puzzles in there as well, I would have liked a little more diversity on what you could do in this, because it really seems like there's only 1 or 2 types of, so far at least, there's only 1 or 2 types of solutions to beat the hole. And I would have liked more where if I was a more skilled player and was able to get better power on my shots, that I was able to get like a better score. But it just doesn't seem like I'm able to do that. Unless maybe I'm not skilled enough, which is a possibility. But I think that's the only quibble I have thus far. But I'm going to play a little bit more of this game. I'm going to show the gameplay today of the game I've been playing. It's about an hour's worth of time. I probably shouldn't take that long to do it. But other than that, I like it so far. I'm going to play a little bit more of it and see how that is. So that's Curse to Golf. It is on sale right now on Steam for $14. So I would say if you're interested in it, check it out, it's not a bad price. I think that's a decent deal for what you're getting, but of course I'm going to play a little bit more throughout the week. Okay, so let's get into the news that happened for May 13th through May 15th. That's the weekend until Monday that happened this past week. And let's start with that Tears of the Kingdom sells nearly $500,000 in physical sales in France. Yeah, those dirty cheese eaters really love them, their Tears of the Kingdom. I didn't know that they translated Tears of the Kingdom into French. Yeah, I guess that makes sense anyway. Tears of the Kingdom was going to sell really well. My question was going to be, was it going to sell as well as Breath of the Wild right away? And of course, I might be wrong on this, but I still think it will get more, but it will take another generation to actually do that. Of Tears of the Kingdom either being re-released on the new Switch as a new port, or if the new Switch or the new Nintendo console is backwards compatible. I think that's the only way that it will reach those sales. On top of that, Tears of the Kingdom also had the biggest box launch of the year in the UK. And this is key, beating Hogwarts Legacy by more than 50%. I knew it was going to be a big deal. I didn't think it was going to beat Hogwarts Legacy. I thought Hogwarts Legacy would probably have more sales this year because of the brand that is Harry Potter. I think Harry Potter is a bigger brand than Zelda, to be absolutely honest. So that kind of surprised me. But then, if you think about it as well, The Legend of Zelda is on what is the most bought console, and people have been looking forward to this game, so I guess that makes sense. My question is, will Hogwarts Legacy beat it when it comes to Switch? There is a strong possibility that it might happen. I'm not sure if it will beat the sales for this year. I think that's going to go down to Zelda right away. But unless the Switch port is poor for Hogwarts Legacy, I would be surprised if that eats up a little bit of that market, but that's still a great job by Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo. They must be thrilled with what's going on right now with that game. Next story, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt is ceasing development. I think it's starting now, actually. For those of you who don't know what Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt is, it's not the sequel to the RPG that was made, what was it, like 15, 16 years ago? What was it called? Bloodlines. There we go. Yeah, it's not a sequel to Bloodlines. There is a Bloodlines 2 coming out that's in it. It's still in development, but right now there is no sure timeline as to what's being released. Bloodhunt was the Battle Royale that was announced last year and released last year in April, and they've just announced they're ceasing development of that game. They are saying that the servers will remain online until further notice, which I guess if you've been playing the game, you buy the battle passes and everything, that's great. So you'll still be able to play that game with other people. So this really is a lesson, I would say, for brands to know what their audiences want. It reminded me a lot of Shadowrun. I don't know if many of you remember this game, but Shadowrun, before it went, well, it was first an RPG on the Super NES, and of course, if you're a tabletop player, you know Shadowrun is a tabletop. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, but set in the future. It's cyberpunk dystopian and stuff like that. But there was the Super NES, and I think Genesis RPG that came out. But then after that, the next game that came out, if I recall correctly, was the 360 game. It was a multiplayer first-person shooter. Now, I played that game, and I thought it was fun. I liked Shadowrun on 360. But the people who were fans of Shadowrun didn't want that, so it didn't sell very well. And it wasn't until it became the PC RPG Shadowrun Returns when it got the sales that they wanted for that game. And I think this is similar to what happened with Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt, where the developer was like, oh, they like this property, let's do something popular with that property. Not realizing that people want a specific thing for that specific property. This doesn't surprise me that they're ceasing development, and the reason why they're probably doing it is because it didn't reach the sales target that they needed. It is nice that they're going to leave that running, but I would think in about a year or two that's probably going to get shut down entirely. So that is sad. There hasn't been any word of layoffs for that company yet, but hopefully they'll start developing something new to pick themselves up. Next story, Amazon is making a Lord of the Rings MMO for PC and consoles. They're partnering with Embracer Group and Middle-earth Enterprises to bring the game forward. I could have sworn that Amazon was already doing this. I think they started in 2019, I think this is around the time that they were still developing the New World, that they were also doing this Lord of the Rings MMO. But apparently they're doing a different one at this, and there is not much or any information as to what goes on with this one, except that it's going to be set around the time where the books happen, I believe is what they were saying in this. My only question really is this. There is already a Lord of the Rings MMO. It's Lord of the Rings Online, and I played it a long time ago when I was trying to get into MMOs. It was that, it was Guild Wars, and it was World of Warcraft. And I got more into Guild Wars than anything, but even I had to admit that Lord of the Rings Online was kind of charming in its own way. But I just couldn't get into it because I just wasn't into MMORPGs at the time. But Lord of the Rings Online is still running to this day. It's still running. I think it's a 10-year-old game at this point. Probably older than that. But it is still running right now. You can get it on Steam. It's free to play. What are they going to do with that game? Are they going to keep that running? The license for that game might be a little bit different from what Amazon is doing on this. So that might be the reason. Oh, God. Could they actually be doing an MMO based on the Rings of Power? Oh, God. That might be awful. Oh, that would be bad. Oh, I hope not. But anyway, we'll see about that. It makes sense to a certain extent. I am starting to question exactly how popular Lord of the Rings is right now as a big-ticket property. Yes, the movies from like 2001 through 2003 are beloved. The Hobbit movies, not so much. And then since then, I mean, there was Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor that did pretty well. But Rings of Power tanked, and it looks like Gollum, the new game that's coming out this month actually, based on the Lord of the Rings property, is not going to be very good. I don't know. A part of me is really wondering if that property is really worth it to that end. I might be wrong. I think it will do well, but the reason why Amazon would probably want to do an MMO based on this property is to get a constant stream of money coming in to make that game, and they're considering it such a popular brand to actually make that game with that brand. I just don't know how popular it is nowadays. Yes, I know the movies are beloved, specifically the Fellowship, Return of the King, and Two Towers. They're beloved, but there really hasn't been a big quality thing for Lord of the Rings since then, I don't believe. So it will be kind of interesting to see what they do with that, and I think they're starting development now, so we're probably not going to hear anything about this for another 5 or 6 years. So they're announcing it, and that's about it on this point. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with, and whether Lord of the Rings Online will still be around when that happens. So we'll see. And finally, let's get to the top story that happened these past few days, and that is, of course, that the EU approved Activision Blizzard's sale to Microsoft. They see no issues involved with the buyout. It seems like Microsoft did enough to please them and be able to let the sale go through. And because that the UK CMA issued a statement saying that the EU was wrong on their decision to approve the deal. A lot of talk and chatter has been going on since the CMA decided to not honor the sale. It just seems like more and more experts and people surrounding or talking about the deal think that the CMA is kind of a joke at this point. And the reason that they gave as to why it's not going through is pretty suspect. To be fair, the appeals process has been called incredibly difficult to actually get the CMA to change their mind, or the government to change their mind. So Microsoft still might be up the creek at this point. But there also is the chance that some people think, I don't know if this is really going to happen. There's also the chance that the CMA might just make a deal with Microsoft to let it go through, either by giving the property or laying the property onto the services, or something along the lines of that the Activision Blizzard games can't be on Game Pass. That is a possibility. If this doesn't go through, it might not at this point. If it doesn't go through, I mean, this is going to be a big stumbling block for Microsoft. But a lot of experts in the financial sector and the business sector think that this could be very damaging for England at this point when it comes to making businesses and getting big tech businesses to do business in England. Because the moment that you then do this and you say, oh, we're not going to honor this, we're not going to let it go, that's going to be a lot of money that the United Kingdom is going to leave off the table when other companies want to do business with. So in that case, it might mean that the people in charge, I think it's the Prime Minister, that the Prime Minister in charge at the time might want to push back on the CMA in their way and say, hey, let this go through. You might hurt us financially. And that's the same thing that could happen with the FTC as well. That's why I'm still, like, I thought at the beginning, throughout all this, that this was going to go through. I am not as sure as I was when it came to this sale. If the EU found it completely fine to allow the sale to go through, it's starting to damage the credibility a little bit of the CMA and the FTC. Just like with the CMA, like I mentioned, the FTC is another thing that will have to deal with the consequences if this goes through. If either A, they block it, and people think that this was unnecessary and it didn't need to be blocked. But B, and this is a key thing too to remember, if this gets challenged in court and Microsoft wins, this damages the credibility of the leader of the FTC. I forget her name, but she works under Joe Biden, of course, President Biden, of course. And if she ends up with egg on her face on this could mean her job. And there might be a situation where, I don't know, the White House rings it up and says, let it go through. We don't want to get humiliated like this. So just drop the suit, let it go through. That is a distinct possibility for that to happen too. And if the FTC caves, then the CMA might cave as well. So you would need to have one of those two boards to then turn around and say, you know what, we change our mind, and then that will let everything fall back. It's not looking like the CMA will do that, so it might look like the FTC might be the regulatory body that might turn around, if this were to happen, to be the one to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to let it go through. We're going to drop the lawsuit. I don't know that. I can't guarantee that. But with the government, the U.S. government now looking into things regarding this buyout and questioning the business practices of Sony specifically and how they keep Japanese-style games out of Xbox by signing exclusive agreements, this might be something that the FTC might want to step back from unless they want to get more political ire. See, even though it's politicians who decide on who gets hired in these bureaucratic positions, the last thing that these bodies want is to be in the politics game. I know it's weird. Just hear me out on this. So think of the federal bank. Think of the Justice Department and the Federal Trade Commission. The more and more they wade into politics, the less effective they are. And if they get into the political machinations of what's going on when it comes to this deal, it might be in their best interest just to keep themselves divested from the political environment to just let it go. So depending on if the United States Congress and the House of Representatives will want to dig in deeper into Sony's business practices, we might see the FTC drop it. We might. I can't guarantee it. On the other hand, if the CMA doesn't pull back and they don't and they don't win the appeal, Activision, Blizzard, and Microsoft, this might be a dead deal. So we will see when that happens. And that's it for the stories for the past 3 days from May 13th to May 15th. Do you like the new format? If you do, let me know in the comments and on social media. I have changed my social media handle. It is no longer Capital Games Wiz. It is I Am That Wiz. I could have put I Am The Wiz for some reason. I think somebody else has that. That is it for this episode of Capital Games. Tune in next time where I discuss the news that is happening throughout the week. Plus, I will talk about what I think the possible sales projections will be for the new game Lego 2K Drive on Wednesday. And until then, I am The Wiz. This is Capital Games. Talk to you next time. Bye.